The latest CDC tracking data on bird flu suggests the virus may be spreading undetected among humans.
Now, I will tell you that COVID was a minor pandemic. People say it's the biggest pandemic we had in 100 years. It's a minor pandemic. It had probably less than 0.5% mortality, and then only in certain patient populations, those over 60, over 65.
Quick, 30 seconds. Why should we be worried about bird flu?
Bird flu is going to be a major pandemic. If in the cases to date in humans have about 50% mortality. If you look at bird flu right now, it's in over 150 million of our chickens and birds. We now know it's in 48 different mammal species. It's now gotten into humans. It's starting to change in humans. Once it learns how to go human to human, we will have a catastrophic pandemic.
We also learned this weekend that the number of hospitalizations is up to 4. That doesn't seem like much, and it isn't, but the worry is if the virus is left unchecked, a more substantial health crisis could be looming.
Now to the spread of bird flu, which is causing egg prices to soar. Dozen eggs now 50% more expensive than a year ago, and there appears to be no relief in sight. Several U.S. Department of Agriculture employees working on the country's response to bird flu were accidentally fired over the weekend, and now the government is trying to hire them back. In a statement released yesterday, the agency says it's working to rescind the letters for the positions related to bird flu efforts. The latest data shows 151 confirmed flocks have been hit by bird flu, affecting 23 million birds. The CDC has confirmed 68 cases of bird flu among humans in the U.S. so far.
So we've been talking about bird flu for quite a bit. I mean, is now the time when people really need to start paying attention with the number of cases that we have? I mean, those are pretty extraordinary numbers.
I think to put this into context, it would be helpful for people to understand how a pandemic bird flu emerges. And we have a graphic, I think, that's going to come up on screen here to help illustrate this. So the bird flu can infect birds as well as mammals, which include pigs, cattle, and cats. People can get infected with the bird flu when they come into close contact with infected animals. So farm workers, for example, are at high risk for infection. At the same time, people can get infected with the regular human flu during winter flu season. And so a person could get infected with both the human flu and the bird flu at the same time, especially if, say, they're a farm worker or someone else who comes into close contact with infected animals. So now the flu virus is made up of 8 different pieces of genetic material. When you have different flu strains infect a person or another animal at the same time, those flu strains can swap parts. And that's how you make a new hybrid flu strain. These new hybrid flu strains can be especially dangerous because now you can get the human-to-human spread, and that can spark a pandemic.
What is a horror movie? I mean, that is terrifying.
It's Frankenstein, right?
The U.S. Department of Agriculture has issued conditional approval for a bird flu vaccine for use in chickens. The vaccine from manufacturer Zoetis is one of multiple targeting bird flu in poultry. According to the USDA, avian flu has been confirmed in 146 flocks in the past month, affecting more than 20 million birds. 34 million egg-laying hens have been culled since December. Not all those birds necessarily tested positive for avian flu, but were members of a flock where a case was confirmed. Among humans, there have been at least 68 confirmed cases of bird flu last year, according to the CDC. One person has died from the disease. Over the weekend, Ohio's health department reported the 4th case of a person being hospitalized for bird flu.
The issue with cats, whether domestic or wild, for some reason, I don't know what the reason is, they're very susceptible to this version of bird flu.
The veterinarian breaks down 3 ways cats can get the bird flu.
So 3 ways. The cat's outdoors eating infected birds, if it's fed contaminated milk or contaminated raw milk or contaminated raw pet food.
The Oregon Department of Agriculture confirming a strain of the bird flu, or HPAI, in the felines on its website. A notice reads in part, tests confirm highly pathogenic avian influenza, HPAI, in 2 cats living in different households in Multnomah County, Oregon. The owners of the cats, in consultation with their veterinarians, elected to humanely euthanize the pets due to the severity of the illness. ODA confirmed both cats ate the same brand of raw pet food before becoming ill. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, H5N1 bird flu viruses have been detected sporadically in some domestic animals, including cats, during outbreaks outbreaks in Thailand in 2004, northern Germany in 2006, and Poland and South Korea in 2023. The CDC says it's unlikely people would become infected with bird flu through contact with a stray or domestic cat, but it's probable if there's a prolonged and unprotected exposure to the animal.
I just said that about cases. Is that right? Is that the thing to worry about, the bird flu? Not so much individuals, but the fact that it's changing a lot and what that means.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, it would be helpful for people to understand how the virus can change to lead to a bird flu pandemic. So we have a graphic we're going to show on screen here. The bird flu can infect birds as well as mammals, including pigs, cattle, and cats. People can also get infected with the bird flu when they come into close contact with infected animals. So farm workers, for example, are at high risk for infection. At the same time, people can get infected with the regular human flu during winter flu season. So a person could get infected with both the human flu and the bird flu at the same time, especially if, say, they're a farm worker or someone else who comes into close contact with infected animals. Now, the flu is made up of 8 different pieces of genetic material. And when you have different flu strains that infect a person or an animal, at the same time, those flu strains can swap parts. And that's how you get a new hybrid flu strain. And these new hybrid flu strains, they can potentially transmit from person to person and trigger a pandemic.
Right, so we become just this blender in which all of it's mixed up and the new thing comes out. The CDC had been reportedly tracking this bird flu with 2 studies that got stuck in the administration's effort to do a variety of things but never got out. How much did that concern you that those reports didn't get out?
Well, it's concerning because even with the end of the communications pause, those 2, what they're called MMWR, so these are weekly reports that come out from the CDC, have done so for decades. And this is how the CDC communicates scientific developments with doctors, scientists, people in the field. And those 2 publications are still held up. And one of those reportedly shows that there's been bird flu transmission among cattle that is going under the radar. And this is concerning because this is not the first time also that we've seen political interference with the CDC's weekly publication. This also happened during the COVID pandemic to make the situation with COVID seem rosier than it was. And this is really not what you would call transparency. We need transparency to know, all of us, how to respond.
Health officials are warning bird flu continues to spread across the country, impacting dozens of farms and roughly 20 million poultry and birds in just the last 30 days. In a new report over the weekend, the USDA is saying the national wholesale average price for eggs increased 40 cents over the last week to $7.74 per dozen. Experts say there's little chance that we're going to see lower costs coming anytime soon, with continuing outbreaks limiting the ability for those farmers to rebuild their healthy flocks. Those wholesale prices could take weeks to lag into stores for consumers to see them, but consumers are already feeling that sticker shock. According to the Consumer Price Index, the average cost for a dozen eggs has now hit a record $4.95 for consumers. That's 50% higher than last year's price, and we're now paying about 80 cents more than just last month.
Although there are some confirmed human cases, experts still say the general risk of the bird flu to the public remains low, although it continues to cause some issues in parts of the country, including here in New York State.
To suggest any human-to-human spread of bird flu. Officials stress, though, surveillance of these outbreaks is vital to containing this virus and any potentially more severe mutations. Guys.
All right, Ariel, lots to watch for there. Very important.